So thank you for joining us. This is hosted by the Engage Barrie organization. We are a nonprofit formed to help to create an equitable community, empowered people, and an engaged local democracy. We like to say an informed voter is an empowered voter. Today we are focusing on wards 9 and 10. Unfortunately, some people were unable to join us today. Those include Joy Douglas, who is in transit today. She's stuck at a Halifax Airport, so can't get here. And also, let me just check my list. Adam Wilcox got ill, so very last minute he canceled. And we have a couple other candidates that are unable to attend. We do have encouraged all candidates to provide written responses to the 3 questions that we've given to them in advance, and we'll get into that a little bit more. So we're sort of told candidates to sort of think of this as a job interview. They're going to have 1.5 minutes to introduce themselves and talk about their top 3 priorities should they be elected in office. And then we'll spend a little time looking at the 3 questions that our team has given them in advance. So they've had some time to prepare for that. They'll have 2.5 minutes to answer that. And then we will go to audience questions and have the candidate answer that. Before I begin, though, I would like to take this time to have a land acknowledgement. On behalf of Engage Barrie organization, I want to thank the candidates who are joining this evening and the attendees for taking time out of their schedules to appear here today. I would also like to acknowledge that even though we are gathered virtually today, we are gathered on the lands of Barrie. These are traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Lake Simcoe and Kempenfelt Bay are part of the Upper Canada Treaties, and the City of Barrie is part of Treaty 16, signed in 1815, and Treaty 18, signed in 1818. As a settler, when I listen and learn more about traditional cultures of this land, I come to further value the importance of shared history, storytelling, stewardship of our lands, and cooperation among people. As we listen to our candidates, let's take the time to hear their stories and listen to their intentions for the stewardship of the city that we call our home. Thank you very much. Norm, if you'd like to join us, come on camera.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
I am just getting my list here organized. So we'll start with, we'll give you the allotted 1.5 minutes to introduce yourself. I'll just jump in about 30 seconds to let you know you have 30 seconds left. And so if you can introduce yourself and tell us your top 3 priorities that you'll be tackling if you're elected to office.
All right, well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Engage Barrie for the opportunity to speak with everyone today. My name is Norman Costello. I'm running to represent you in Ward 9 for the upcoming election. I'm 63 years old and have been living in Barrie for 21 years with my wife of 40 years, Kim, and we have 2 grown children, adult children, Scott and Sheena. I'm employed as a production manager for a corrugated box manufacturer in Concord, Ontario, which is in the Vaughan area. And I've decided to run in this election for the residents of Ward 9 because we need change. Status quo is not the answer. We must take our city's issues head on and must ask and answer the tough questions. My top 3 priorities are snow removal. Our city plows have a pile of snow at the end of our driveways every time they go by. Our city is top 10 in Canada for snowfall, and yet we leave this windrow of snow for our residents to deal with every single time. It's not really snow removal, it's just snow displacement. I'll install snow gates on plows to eliminate the windrow. Homeless and affordability in housing. We need to get our homeless people off the streets and give them a safe place to call home. We also need to look at the affordable housing.
30 seconds.
We can talk about in some of our other areas later on, including tiny housing. Policing, we need to support our police force. With that, they need to keep up so they can keep us safe. If we have the growth expected over the next 20 years, we need to start with supporting our police service by giving them what they need. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So with that, what we'll do is we'll now get into the questions that we sent in advance. I will read the questions and then we'll have 2.5 minutes to respond and on their take on those questions. So the first question has to deal with housing. Access to affordable quality housing is a fundamental human right, which affects our physical and mental health, prosperity, and community. The City of Barrie's Housing Affordability Task Force report has given us a blueprint of how to tackle the housing crisis. Which of these recommendations would you prioritize? How do you intend to support housing development in a way that addresses the needs of all income levels, abilities, ages, and stages, while also being environmentally responsible and working towards a more diverse, integrated community building?
Thanks for the question. The housing market, including affordable housing, is a real challenge. I believe we need to encourage existing homeowners to look at the opportunities of creating a duplex out of their single-family dwellings. This will allow for more competition in the marketplace and help keep rental costs down. We should also be looking at building up and not out to reduce the footprint. I think that by looking at our zoning and maybe consider multi-use zoning to allow more people to work where they live. We should also be encouraging the building of tiny homes. Tiny homes can help alleviate some of our housing concerns. A tiny home isn't for everyone, but for a lot of people, that's all they really want and need. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. So the second question that is on our list is related to youth. What plans do you have for attracting and retaining more young people to and in our city, including plans for ensuring more inclusive, vibrant, and sustainable environment for them? How will you attract the quality and well-paying employment opportunities to help give them a more secure future? And what programs and services can the city provide to help them build their skills and support young entrepreneurship? Young people meaning people in their late teens, 20s, and early 30s.
Thank you. Excuse me. I think we need to encourage a work and play atmosphere instead of a sleep and drive one. 40,000 plus Barrie residents drive the 400 every day. We need to find out what drives our youth to better understand where we need to go with them. Find out what they want. We need to do a better job at bringing businesses here to Barrie so our youth can live, sleep, and play where they live. I believe that we need to bring back trades in our education system. There's a shortage of labor everywhere, but specifically in the trades which tend to pay well. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Norman. No problem with you going overboard on time. You're very succinct with your responses. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So the third question that we were giving you in advance is growth. Looking forward and beyond Barrie's housing concerns, how will you handle the growth of our population and the opportunities and challenges this can generate? What are your 3 priorities to make our community more equitable, safe, and affordable for all residents as we grow, while providing the infrastructure, public transportation, green space, and recreation, and other city services required by this increasing population? And how will you work towards eliminating systemic barriers, including race, gender, ability, age, and economic status, to ensure Barrie is a safe and welcoming city for all residents?
Thank you. Growth. As I said earlier, with our grow up and out in regard to our housing issue, we need to do this specifically to support our future growth. This will help utilize our existing transit system, which is underused. Policing is suffering. Our police service works very hard to protect our city, but we have failed to support them in the way that they need to keep our city safe. If we don't address our current crime now before our growth, it will become out of control. I believe this is one of our major concerns. We need to support our law enforcement and give them the tools needed to do the job that they love. Some of the things I would like to see is more policing, maybe even some smaller localized stations around our communities and in our subdivisions. Maybe more foot patrol and police on bikes and motorcycles or even on horses. I believe this will help our residents and police to have a positive engagement. We need to take back our downtown so as we grow, we can enjoy the shops and restaurants and our waterfront during the day, evening, and the nighttime. We must continue to remove systematic barriers in our city. We will do this with policy procedure changes and remove any unfair practices. There's no place for them here. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. Oops. Okay, that's great. Thank you for those answers. Very well thought out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move to the section where we have some questions that have come in from the audience, and we're going to ask those questions and give you a minute to respond. So the first question that's come in is, as a counselor, what will you do to make sure the public is listened to and involved with local decision making?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks for the question. I think that with the use of social media, it's become easy for counselors to just expect residents to, go to their site or go to their pages and their Facebook groups and their Twitter accounts and see what the counselors are trying to do or accomplish. I think that there's, in some of my answers to some of the other questions in regards to policing and so on, I think we've come out of touch with our residents. We need to communicate with them, by old-fashioned ways, like by telephone, by walking to their door, knocking on their door, getting to know your residents that live in your ward. Find out what's really the concerns that they have and communicating back what you're trying to do for them with those concerns. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Okay. So the next question that has come in is, it is common to believe that municipally elected officials are accountable to violence and harassment in the workplace. However, this is not the case. A bill called Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act was brought forward to introduce provincial legislation that would deter municipal councillors and board members from engaging in harassment by holding them accountable for their actions, but it was not passed before the provincial election. It has since been reintroduced as Bill 5. Do you support this bill? And if elected, what would you do to support it?
Well, thank you. Harassment anywhere, including the workplace, is unacceptable and should not be tolerated. I would support any bill that supports people's rights and freedoms, and including freedom of speech, and the ability to protect them from harassment, any type of harassment. So yeah, I would support any bill that would protect people from harassment. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Another question that's come in from the attendees is about climate action. Given that the city of Barrie has declared a climate emergency in 2019, what specific climate action policy will you champion that will have immediate impact on reducing GHG emissions within our city operations?
Well, that's a great question. That's a hot topic button, or hot button topic. I think that throwing money or taxation of people for greenhouse gases and emissions, when we don't give them the alternatives to replace those greenhouse gas emission items like cars and gasoline cars and so on. It's a question that has to be answered over time, because it takes money to support those causes in trying to correct and lower your carbon footprint and so on. But I'm certainly against any kind of taxation as a means of trying to slow down any greenhouse gas emissions.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, so there's a few more questions have come in as well too, and I just will remind attendees that if you have any additional questions, please use the chat feature and chat them to Anita. She's listed as Anita questions in our chat, and we'll make sure we get to them. Another one just came in. I think you may have answered some of this before, but I'll just bring it up again. Understanding that there is a homeless crisis in the city of Barrie, what services would you support to protect our most vulnerable citizens?
Excuse me. I think there's a disconnect between how we're helping or trying to help our homeless people. Homeless people are just not homeless people. Homeless people could be people that are having mental health issues. They could be people who really just have nowhere to go. I think that we need to close the gap and fill in that gap between the mental health crisis and the support that they need. That might even include places for them to go temporarily to be assessed and so on, and given the help that they need. And I don't think that we're doing that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Norman. Another question that's come up is, as Barrie awaits approval of our first supervised consumption site, what other forms of emergency support and harm reduction would you propose or support to help keep people alive, safe, and healthy?
Sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Sure. As Barrie awaits approval of our first supervised consumption site, what other forms of emergency support and harm reduction would you propose or support to keep people alive, safe, and healthy?
I think that we could talk about things as far as emergency preparedness, home building codes, and so on. Especially if we're going to look at affordable housing, we need to protect people from the environment, from the elements, but we need to protect them from tornadoes and weather change and so on. I would support anything that helps keep our people safe. That's why one of my biggest items is policing. I think that we can't even walk down our street in downtown Barrie on a Friday night or Saturday night after later hours. If you went to a movie and wanted to take somebody downtown, you can't do that. We need to protect our people. We need to commit to protecting our people in all corners of the city, not just outside in the suburbs or what have you. Thanks for the question.
Great. We have a couple questions that have come in about arts and culture and recreation in Barrie. So the first question is, what does culture mean to you, and how will you ensure that arts and culture remain a priority for the city of Barrie?
Thanks for the question. I think arts and culture is a huge aspect of people's daily lives. I think that art galleries and crafts and history, a lot of it comes from history, theaters and so on. It's part of the entertainment of a city. I think that it's very important to have a strong and robust and healthy arts and cultural aspect in your city. And I believe that culture to me means it could almost mean anybody's history of what they did in the past as a group, as a family. And we want to maintain, I think that we should maintain that kind of culture, especially when it comes to the arts. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Norman. I think we just have a couple. Oh yeah, the second one on arts and culture and recreation, right? Let's come in. So, do you believe recreation and sporting programs should be subsidized by the city or be fully paid for by the users? And should children have access to affordable programs?
I think that's a very interesting question. I think that it comes down to affordability. Um, if for example, in most cases, I think the subsidy could be the fact that we're building the sporting events or the arenas or the ball diamonds or the courts that they play on. I think we're missing the boat on. So I guess in the short answer is I'd be careful about how much subsidies we do for sporting and so on. But I do think we need to make sure that it's available, if that kind of makes sense. I think the city itself is missing the boat on some of the usages that we can take from areas that are already existing, like school gymnasiums and maybe multi-use parks and so on. There's certain things that we can do, but we have to be careful on how much subsidies we do for sports. But I do think that it needs to be available for all of the children.
Great, thank you. And I have one more question listed here that I'm going to ask you. And again, if there's any last minute questions that want to come in, please chat Anita. This one has to do with budget. What do you believe are the 3 highest cost services to the city? And what would you do to mitigate them and help alleviate tax burdens?
Great question. Having not seen the budget, I would think that roads, policing, and probably recreational and so on would be some of the highest aspects that we're looking at. I think that we need to find money, for example, for roads. Our roads in this city are probably below average. Our policing, I've talked about our policing and what we need to do, but we can't keep ignoring it. And I think that sporting venues and so on, for example, the city-owned arena, the Sadlin Arena, I think that we could more utilize that for concerts and venues and so on to maybe make it a positive instead of a negative on the budget. Hopefully that answers your question. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And I don't see any more questions have come in. I really appreciate your thoughtful answers to those. I'm going to give you now 1.5 minutes for you to sum up and give any closing remarks that you think we may have missed or you'd like to add. And feel free to let us get started.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I could just start off by thanking everybody who attended this Zoom meeting, and I hope I've answered your questions satisfactory. And if you have any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And again, I'd like to thank Engage Barrie for the opportunity. I wish that there was a few more candidates here, but they're not here for whatever reason. And yeah, I think that maybe I'll just close out on wrapping up the rest of my my platform and what I really feel are some key points to the city. I mentioned the snow removal. I think that the snow removal in this city, in a top 10 snowfall region in the country, is just deplorable. The fact that people come home from driving to the city, most people drive to the city, drive back in the winter, come home to 4 or 5, 6 inches of snow, maybe even more, multiple days a week possibly, and spend an hour or two at 5 or 6 or 7 o'clock at night when they get home to clear their driveway, and then 10, 11 o'clock, the plow comes by and buries them in for the morning. I think that's one of my biggest concerns, especially for the elderly. Poor condition of city streets I've talked about. Buses, I think our busing system is oversized for what we're doing and underused. Maybe we could look at some smaller buses. Safe injection sites and homelessness. We spoke a little bit about homelessness. I think we need to deal with the safe injection sites so that we stop encouraging people to participate in illegal activities. Our beaches, I think we need to maintain our beaches for the city of Barrie residents. Traffic lights, I think traffic lights in this city, I'll be heading into work sometimes at 5:30 in the morning and sit at a red light on Mapleview for a minute and a half, 2 minutes with nobody coming by the other way. So I'm sure we could look at some of those areas. Speeding and noisy vehicles, I think, is just out of hand. And it's, I think it has a lot to do with the amount of policing we can put forward to try and stop it. But I think it's something that we can do. Community policing I spoke about. Multi-use zoning, I think we're missing the boat on multi-use zoning. I think that we need to look at some of the other cities around the world that have encouraged multi-use zoning, which eliminates or reduces the amount of time somebody travels to and from work. People running a business out of their house and so on. Single family dwellings, instead of allowing them to run a business, that they live in their house where they run their business. And the other thing is ending legacy projects. And I think that the legacy projects, just for the sake of a legacy, we should be thinking more about the city instead of somebody's legacy. Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us today, Norm. I really appreciate you taking time. I appreciate our attendees joining us, and some of them sending questions in advance, some of them sending questions today, for getting engaged. I think it's important that we get the message out there for as many people as possible to find out about their candidates and get out and vote. Just a reminder that this video will be posted in the next day or so on our website. So please feel free to share that with any other people, specifically, I guess, Norm, with your Ward 9 constituents. We have invited the other candidates that could not attend today to send written responses. And if we receive those will be posted along with Norman's video. So thanks again for coming today, and good luck in the election.
Thanks for having me.